します。黄色い点字ブロックまで下がってお待ちください。
As we wander in the streets of Tokyo, observing supposed banality, beauty reveals itself. Wooden details embellish shrines, greenery overgrows a storefront, train lines overlap. If you look, really look, there are small treasures to behold in this city. Streetscapes are involved in all our experiences, ideas, and images of the city. We don't just use the material environment simply to utilitarian ends. We situate ourselves in the world, temporally and spatially, through the mediation of landscapes. These landscapes, the streets, often hurried through, can work quite magically. Despite not understanding or being aware of every object or detail, we always feel a level, some stronger than others, of atmosphere and presence in the streets. The Tokyo streetscape is more than a street and the buildings on it. Trees may rise behind fences, potted plants are arranged at one's doorstep, materials converse. The streetscape is formed from all these things in combination with the buildings. There's a sense of human-made nature, that is, everything appeared with an intention, but as a whole was untamed. The outer contours of buildings in Japan often do not form the edge of the public domain. Streets feel more like gaps that softly dissolve from the edges of buildings than clear-cut passageways. In many cases, the resulting urban form or structure is not a pure expression of intention, but the imperfect consequence of various factors and happenstance. Streets are the intentions and calculations of many different parties that work in a city. However, this is not a flaw. Instead, they create a more interesting, spatially richer city, endowing it with unexpectedness, newness, ambiguity, and irony. In Tokyo, this inwardness, oku, revealed itself in the developing feeling of place and understanding. It isn't the first time you walk through the non-centric street patterns, gaps, and intersecting streets, but the many times it's constantly revealing itself, its problems, personality, desires, and optimism. The journey to the inwardness is non-directional, to a probably infinite end. city where concrete is king, greenery is found on every street and on every corner. Shintoism and the traditional belief of kami spirits inhabiting nature have developed a cultural respect for nature and greenery. Bushes and vines soften boundaries between the private and public, and in spaces unused, greenery transforms it as if the kami living in the plants lent their otherworldly power. The appreciation of nature isn't limited to the individual, it is manifest at the urban scale as well. It is only when you look over the tree line that you are reminded of where you are. In the red autumn leaves, a space bestowed by nature sits lightly over a stream of water, positioning itself as one with the landscape. I visited Mitakidera, the temple of Mufumakiyama at Hiroshima, to comfort the souls of those killed by the atomic bomb, a testament to the solemnity of Japanese architecture. A long walk through the forest to reach the temple reminds me we are in nature's domain. Here, ritual, architecture, and nature are one, a trinity. They are all each other, inseparable, but one is not the other. I watched two schoolboys pray for good luck and a woman throw water over weathered stone statues, a glimpse into the harmony of Buddhist and Shinto tradition. Fortunes are divined, misfortunes banished, wishes tenderly etched upon emma plaques for the benevolent kami to receive, tokens of gratitude for the unseen guardians of the shrine. Kenzo Tang's Peace Memorial stands as an architecture of aspiration, its gleaming white presence in a flattened landscape echoing the destruction of the war. Tang took historical Japanese works as model. Modernist and nationalist themes were combined subtly. Pilates, a flat roof, flowing space, exposed structure, and the transparency intertwined with the reference to plans and ratios of traditional Japanese architecture and the Shintoist space. Ikawa's rationalist over reactionary approach to the future of Japanese identity aligns with Corbusier's approach, just as how the festival hall looks across the Museum of Western Art. Brutalism's raw vitality, unrefined textures, and exposure to inner mechanisms quickly merged into the debate of the Japanese aesthetic. Japanese architects drew parallels with the material qualities of early archaeological findings to the imported European style. This convergence of ideologies and materials added momentum to the experimentation of architectural expression in Japan. It was 6 a.m. Writing on the stone directed the eye's attention to the natural beauty of the materials, adorned with moss, rope, and folded paper. Amidst the early fog and between whistling calls, I felt a presence and atmosphere of an unknown building, its inscriptions unfamiliar. I walked through a dense forest, passing through red gates that seemed detached from time and this world. They stood offset, intuitively placed, defining a space of inner sacredness within the forest, a domain for the kami. A sense of sanctity permeated the area, drawing in the landscape to form its boundless boundary. In Japanese shrines and philosophy, the utmost sanctity resides in inwardness, the peak of the mountain, the heart of the shrine, the sacred essence of Kyoto, the deity overseeing the city below. In the destruction of tradition, Tang rehabilitated the traditional. The colossal suspended roof is reminiscent of the great halls of Japan's heritage. No longer relying on mere exoticism, nor even upon identifiable brutalist themes borrowed from Le Corbusier, who was a resolution to the problematic of Japanness. Tang was able to synthesize the modern creation of the new and the national conservation of tradition. In this case, his allegiance split. Tang has stood on the side of space wrested from nature, creating a dynamic Dionysian space of competition and celebration. In the 1970s, Japan no longer required an architect who represented the state. Like the popes who dismissed Michelangelo, Tang was abandoned. The post-war economic recovery had succeeded. Architectural work became fueled by the wants and needs of commerce. Japan became identified by its technology and economy, and ideas of the nation's identity were no longer the subject of architects and the state's research. Many of the once impenetrable concrete beacons met their fate as rubble. In Tokyo, architecture has begun to dissolve and become slowly the foundations of a media space, the structure for science to be displayed, a framework for experiential marketing and advertising real estate. This in itself is defining a contemporary style and identity of Japan, a collection of images rather than a single declaration of what it is. Since the rapid growth of technology, the world has become a series of archipelagos with multiple centers. Inevitably, the insular Japan has become one of these mutually heterogeneous configurations. That is to say that the very border that once gave substance to Japanness has been decomposing. The persistent self-reflection in Japanese architecture has revealed sensibilities and qualities moving beyond a singular declaration of Japan's identity. It has freed itself from the obligation of paying homage to traditional forms and from the gravitational pull of American and European thought. Contemporary Japanese architecture embodies a wide variety of design intentions and purposes that could appear as different as the buildings themselves. The most celebrated contemporary architecture of Japan often makes a critical commentary on or a derivative of the present-day urban and cultural conditions in Japan. And often they manifest a special fragmentary quality. In this architecture, as in the cultural and urban landscape in which these works have been conceived, scattered elements, incongruous motifs and materials, fractional and membranous surfaces are liberated, neither in opposition or reconciliation.
Hey.